Alrighty, I think we'll get started. There might be a few more people popping in. And so I think I know everybody here. Good to have you back. We're going to be talking a little bit more about Copilot today. And so last session we talked about a few different layers. So we started with the Copilot chat. We talked about Copilot inside Microsoft 365. So we looked at Teams, research, Word, meeting recaps, and then we started to look a little bit into Copilot Cowork. But today we're going to go even deeper into this Cowork, and we might even take a couple more sessions to look at it. There's a lot of really great content that we can be looking at. So, this is where Copilot starts to move from just from like help me to write something or help to do this task to help me run this entire process within my business. It's a huge shift. And so most people still think of Copilot as a chatbot. So you type something in and it gives you some kind of answer, which is still super useful. I use it all the time like this, in Copilot, ChatGPT, Claude, like I still very much use it like that. But Cowork is different because it can start coordinating tasks across your entire Microsoft 365 tenant. So it can work across Outlook, Teams, your calendar, SharePoint, OneDrive, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, To-Do, Planner, like everything. So it starts to get very, very powerful. And, the nice thing about Copilot, and I guess just AI in general, is it's just they're constantly releasing new features. And so, Cowork is even more interesting this week because they actually just released it for on your cell phone. And so now you can start to access Cowork from your Microsoft 365 Copilot app. And so, a lot of the work that we do it can be pretty messy, right? It's not like, we're sitting in front of our computer with 45 spare minutes and we're just drinking a coffee. Like a lot of the times it's happening when we're in between meetings. If we're in the car before a client meeting, we're walking into the office, out of the office, all that kind of stuff. It's like, after a conversation that we just had and we don't want to forget what we just learned. And so now we can start to access Cowork from our phone. So just like imagine picking up your phone and just saying, prep me for my next meeting. And then it's able to go out to all of our different apps and get you that information. Or catch me up on client emails from this morning, or even, at the end of the day as we're, winding down, it's like review today's meeting transcripts and tell me what I need to action. So we can start to do these things while we're on the go. And, this is much different from actually looking for this stuff manually, like from Outlook or, that's the thing for me is when I'm in a panic and I need something quickly, it's like the hardest time for me to find something in Outlook, like whether it's a PDF or what somebody responded to an email or something like that. So this makes it really, really easy to do that. And it's not that, the value here isn't that AI is super smart. It's the value is that it has massive context across all of our different apps and all of our different data. And so this is where it starts to get really useful. And so there's going to be two skills that we're going to look at today. But before I'm even going to get into that, I'm going to set some expectations. And so when some people hear like workflow automation and that kind of thing, and they immediately start to think of giant flow diagrams, complicated backend systems, APIs, consulting, lots of dollars, that kind of stuff. That is not what we're going through today. So today we're going to show two simple Cowork skills. And the first is the run the onboarding skill. And so this is our new internal client onboarding workflow. And basically it's as easy as me uploading this proposal into Cowork and saying run onboarding skill. That's how easy it is to use. And then the second one that we'll be looking at if we have time is prepare for my next meeting. And so this one pulls the context from our call, or from our calendar, our Teams, Teams transcripts, Teams messages between like the team and clients. It gives me suggested questions, possible issues that are going to come up on the call. Just really, really powerful. So yeah, again, today is not about showing like a giant technical automation. It's about showing how a normal business process can be packaged into a reusable skill. And so this is really important to know. For our onboarding demo, it's not a huge process, but it's a little bit more in depth. But I wanted to create a skill within Copilot Cowork, all these different C's, Copilot Cowork. So I wanted to generate a skill for it. And, all I did was I copied and pasted our existing SOP into Cowork, and then I chatted back and forth with it to create the skill. And so it's really easy to create these skills. There's different tips and ways that we can make them better. But it wasn't like this. I didn't have to drag anything and do a flow diagram. I'm just talking to it in natural language, copying and pasting. Like, it's really straightforward. And also important to note, we're not asking Cowork to create our business processes from scratch. It's not there yet. I'm sure it will be at some point, but we have to feed it in what we want it to do, right? What is our current process, and help us run it more consistently. And I think that's like the difference between random AI usage and operational AI usage. Is random AI usage is much more ad hoc. Write me something, do this task for me. Whereas operational AI is, here is how we do this work. Now help us do it consistently. And again, this is where it gets really valuable. One thing to note, there are times where some of these processes require, they're more organizational wide. They need more structured agents, more controlled workflows. So that's done in Copilot Studio. And we'll talk about that probably later in the summer. But today's, Cowork, it's useful for personal and, certain team level delegation. And so today we're thinking really practically. It's more, what repetitive processes do we already have that Cowork can help us coordinate? And it's not so much like, how do we rebuild our entire company with AI? Okay, we'll get started on our onboarding process. So this is like a fictitious company. This isn't like an actual one of our proposals, but I had Copilot create this for our demonstration here. So I just said, create a signed proposal with company name, our point of contact, address with the company. We've got onboarding information, pricing, all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of like, this is the foundation of our skill kind of thing. And so at Alpha IT, when we sign a new client, there's a bunch of different things that happen for onboarding. So we need to extract the client details from our signed proposal. We need to create SharePoint folders, draft kickoff communication, create a welcome package, notify there's a bunch of different steps that we have to take in order to kick off our onboarding. And then, at the end of the day, we have to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks, most importantly. But they are easy to miss, right? These things are easy to miss, a bunch of little steps in the process. And that's how a lot of business processes work. It's, someone's reading a document, copies information into an email, creates a folder, sends a Teams message, and then hope that they remembered everything. It's real operational life. So, and if you're a growing organization, those little manual steps create delays, inconsistency, missed handoffs, staff frustration, and then most importantly, client experience issues. And so I'll pop over to Copilot Cowork here. And so and just as a side note, Cowork is still in frontier mode, frontier status. So it's very cutting edge, generally, but especially for Microsoft. And so it can be a little bit messy. Things don't always necessarily work 100%. So, as you can see here, I was trying to attach the file yesterday and it wasn't loading for some reason. So I just dropped it in OneDrive and I said, search for signed proposal Pacific Ridge Builders. And then it was able to find it, which really outlines the power of this, right? And like, and why it's so great on your phone is because Microsoft, we have access to all of our files, all of our folders, our Teams messages, everything. But anyway, so in your organization, the trigger might be a little bit different. For us, it was a signed proposal here. It could be a lease is signed, a purchase order is created, a completed assessment, a budget, an income statement. It can be any number of those types of things that we want to use to create this different process. And so then all I typed in was run the client onboarding skill. And that's it. No giant prompt, no complex instructions. The skill knows what our onboarding process is supposed to include, what information it needs to pull from the proposal, what folder structure we typically use, what client communication we want, who needs to be notified internally, and what follow-up needs to be created. And again, we're not looking to reinvent the process here. We've already defined that. We're just looking to co-work to execute that process correctly every time. And so then right away, it's pulled all of the different information from the signed proposal. So we've got the name, we've got the contact email, phone number, all the stuff that's on here, the important details, when the support begins and when the onboarding is complete. So, this is something where we've already eliminated a little bit of manual work, because whenever we have a signed proposal, our service delivery manager has to start to go in there and pull some of the details. What have we promised for onboarding? What package are we using? All that kind of stuff. So we've already eliminated a little bit of work and mind you, it's very, very small what is eliminated here, but this is what AI is really, really good at, in my opinion, is incremental improvements across the organization. So I had a hockey coach when I was growing up, and I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was something along the lines of, we take care of all the different micros and we'll take care of the macro, right? So if we take care of all the little things, then we'll start to win games. We didn't really win any games that season, but we did go down a tier and we won that. But this is actually how I think about AI in a business. It's not always one giant magical transformation like we sometimes think AI is going to be. It's a whole bunch of small improvements. So less copy and pasting, fewer missed handoffs, better meeting prep, cleaner follow-up, more consistent client experience. And so then those micros start to add up to big changes in our company. And we had this in a meeting yesterday where we were talking to Juliana, like our metrics for resolution time, response time, and all that kind of stuff they're down like massively, like huge improvement. And he was trying to think of what big thing over the last little while has kind of contributed to that. And he couldn't think of one big thing. So it's just been years of compounding AI, compounding technology, and of course, starting off with like that solid foundation of standard operating procedures. But anyway, I digress. So right away, I asked it to get started, and we can start to see what it's doing for us. And so it creates our folder structure automatically. So we've got our client info, incident reports, projects, proposals, quarterly business reviews. It even threw the signed proposal in the folder for us, so we don't have to worry about that. And so we don't save a ton in SharePoint, but this gives you an idea of what's possible. So it really feels like every business has some version of this. For a construction company, it could be contracts, drawings, change orders, spreadsheets, permits, that kind of thing. For a municipality, it might be council reports, vendor documents, nonprofit funding agreements, board documents, program reporting. The pattern is the same. We have a repeatable structure that people are supposed to follow, but it depends on human memory every single time, and eventually it gets inconsistent, especially when we have all of these different little tasks that we have to follow. So Cowork can help standardize the basics. And I also don't want to oversell this. Creating folders is not revolutionary, but creating folders, extracting details, drafting communication, notifying staff, etc., all from one, one kind of like 3 or 4 word prompt, like that starts to become very, very meaningful. And so I'll pop back over to Cowork. And like I said at the beginning, everybody's kind of able to hop in. If you have any questions throughout this thing, please jump in. It's a small group today. So yeah, hopping into client communication now. It starts to draft like the kickoff communication. And so this is one that I really don't want to understate. Communication consistency definitely matters. And as companies grow, this is one of the first things that starts to break. One staff member will send a really great email. Another sends something that's too short or forgets a booking link, forgets an intake form. Another uses like language that, does not sound like our company. It has no place here kind of thing. Or if you're like me, I just forget to send the email entirely. And so this skill helps standardize all of that. We can tell it who the email is from, what tone we want, what the link includes, what the client needs to know, jargon to avoid, all that kind of stuff. And it does it automatically every single time. And it gives us a really, really strong first draft. It looks a little bit weird here. I'll show you it in Outlook. But it's not perfect, but it is strong. And this is the key. We're not looking at this to replace us. We're looking at it to replacing that first blank page and the repetitive setup work. And so this is where okay, and I'll just mention this. This is one thing that got me really excited. When I'm creating this skill, or when I'm creating our skills from existing SOPs and processes, all that kind of stuff, it's we're looking at it through a new lens, and we're starting to iterate on it. This was something that I created like 2 or 3 years ago, and so now a lot has happened since then, and we're able to see, okay, what has worked well over the last little while, and what does Cowork think of some different ways that we could improve this process. And so we found at the beginning we were sending a lot of emails to the clients with different information. And so we thought, okay, what if we create like a PDF that we just attach to the document? And so it generated this PDF. And now whenever we run the onboarding skill, it's generating this welcome package that is specific to the client each time. And so it pulled the client information from the proposal, it pulled the contact information, their address, what they've got from us, dates for discovery, for when onboarding is supposed to be completed, who their onboarding lead is. It's like it did all of this without me having to do anything except say run our onboarding skill. And so it's something that I found really useful that we're definitely going to use internally here. So I'll pop back over to Copilot here, and so we also we send out a few different emails internally and that kind of thing, and so we have Cowork now sending our message to Andrew Mendoza, who's our onboarding specialist. And this is sometimes where people really start to underestimate the value. A huge amount of operational drag inside companies isn't the technical work itself, it's the coordination around the work. Who needs to know? What do they need? Where is the file? What's the deadline? What has been promised? Who owns the next step? This is where things really start to fall through the cracks. And we've had this company for 10 years, and huge mistakes have been made, very costly mistakes, especially at the beginning where we didn't have an internal communication really ironed out. And so in this workflow, Cowork can create internal Teams message and it actually sends them out right from here. So you can see this was sent to Andrew right from Cowork. And so it pulled all the details again from the proposal, who the onboarding is for, their name, their locations, all that kind of stuff. I did tell him it was a test from Copilot, but I don't think that he's either playing along with it really well, or he thinks that we're actually onboarding this client. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, so as I was going through this last night, I thought, okay, well, what if we changed this a little bit? And it doesn't make sense for it to go just to Andrew. I should also be sending it to my service delivery manager and the account manager. And so I'll show you in a little bit, but we can start to iterate on these different skills, very, very easily. Alrighty, and back to here. So yeah, again, this is the part that I really want us to think about, because I didn't write like a 900-word instruction set for this. I don't have to remember every single detail. I don't have to go searching for an SOP, which honestly, we've got like a really great program that we keep our SOPs on, but it's still a bit of a pain to pull it up and search for it and that kind of thing. I don't have to worry about which step I forgot. I just said, run the onboarding skill. And so this is a big shift, because the complexity is not the moment of using the tool. It's just like the complexity is just in the setting it up once. And once the skill exists, using it is extremely simple. And honestly, it's not hard to revise. So we can talk to it in natural language, and we can say, I want to update my skill. I want to change the tone of the email. I want to add this person to the Teams notification. I want to include a new folder on setup. And so I'll show you, what that looks like. So I sent it a message, and I don't even think the message really made sense, but saying that I wanted to upload the onboarding, or update the client onboarding skill, and to include a Teams message to Leo, Andrew, Giuliano, and me, instead of just to Andrew. And so it was able to make that change to that skill, within like 30 seconds. And so, much easier than going into the SOP and, making the change, version control, all that kind of stuff. I was able just to talk to it and say, make this update for me, please. And that, this is really important for adoption, because if AI requires every staff member to be a prompt engineer, adoption will stall. Like Kim's really good at prompting. I suck at it, right? It's like, what role am I using? What do I want that output to exactly look like? It's like, I have trouble thinking about that every single time. But if AI can be packaged into repeatable skills that match how our organization works, it becomes much more practical. I'll show you one more example here. This one's quite a bit simpler, but hopefully everybody can relate. It's not just me. But we all are getting dragged into different meetings, pulled into Teams calls, in-person meetings, all that kind of stuff. And, it's context changing constantly throughout the day, and not always going into these meetings with, like remembering everything. And it's not because we don't care, but again, it's just like, we're back to back to back things all the time. And so this is where, a simple prompt like this in Cowork can be super useful, especially on mobile. Imagine that you're in between meetings, and you talk on your phone, prepare me for my next meeting. And so that's what we've got here. Or it's, when I was thinking about right before this, is like, review my meetings from today and tell me what I need to action from today. And like, because at the end of the day, most people don't need more information. We need clarity. So what we owe, what we promised, what's urgent, what should be delegated, that kind of thing. So anyway, I haven't created this as a skill, but I will. So, but you can start to see it work here. So I said, prepare me for my next meeting. And yeah, if I ask this to a generic AI like ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity like that, it will give me generic advice. But Cowork accesses my entire Microsoft. And I know I keep saying that, but it's so important. It's accessing all of my data, and just within the Microsoft tenant. But also this week, they just released plugins. And so Cowork can start to access third-party applications. And so it can access, HubSpot or RCRM, QuickBooks Online, all that different kind of stuff. And so it starts to build on that intelligence layer. And so if you see down here, now we've got and this is all live data, so I think I've blurred out everything that I should have. But we have who the meeting is with, recent history, open issues, talking points, suggested questions, objections to expect. There's a whole bunch of different information in here, but it went through everything. It went through like my team's transcripts, all that kind of stuff. And so we have everything in one place where now it goes from like, a 20 or 30-minute task of finding all the information to like a 5 or 10-minute read right before my meeting to feel really, really prepared getting into it. All right. Okay, a couple minutes left here. So I'll just do a quick pause here. So Cowork is really, really powerful, but it's not magic. And so it works worse when SharePoint, it doesn't work well when SharePoint is just a dumping ground for everything. When nobody owns the process that they're going to be using as a skill in Cowork. When old documents conflict with new documents. I met with a contractor a few weeks ago, and they had just licensed Copilot, and they said, I was searching for our project management process, and we had 5 versions of it for our team. And so they've had 5 different versions of one of their most important building or business processes that their entire team was executing. And so we need to make sure that these things are dialed in, but it's easier than ever to do that now. And so we can use Cowork to find out those different areas of improvement. But we also have to make sure that permissions aren't too broad, and we can't just trust AI blindly. So we have to make sure that we're reviewing everything that it outputs. So that's kind of what we're going to be looking at. That's it for today. I'm thinking for 2 weeks from now, there'll be more of like a workshop where we can really dig into skills. And so we can look at, what skills are and how to build them, the instructions that they need to create a really good skill, when to use Cowork and when to move into Copilot Studio. Now, not everybody here has Cowork, but this can also be used in, Claude or Claudbot or, whatever else. The same thing kind of works. So, after this,